I think this series, more than any other this season for the Orioles, proved that baseball is a marathon and not a sprint. Because you can lose maybe your worst game of the season and still come out with a series win. And that is what the O's did in Oakland. I'll recap all three games coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, July 8th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' series win over the Oakland Athletics this weekend at the Coliseum as the Orioles actually kind of closed out the Coliseum for themselves. They will never play, at least for now, a Major League Baseball game there again. I'll tell you how the O's won on Friday, how they won on Sunday to clinch the series, and what in the world happened in the 19-8 loss on Saturday. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. So the Orioles take 2 of 3 from the A's at the Coliseum this weekend. And just want to say, it was kind of sad to know that the Orioles were never going to watch them play baseball at the Oakland Coliseum again. Kevin Brown had, I think, a nice tribute at the end of Sunday's broadcast. Kind of just got finished listening to that before I popped on here to record the Monday episode. And it sucks. It really sucks what John Fisher did to that city, to that team, to that organization. He is, easily top 5, maybe the worst person in Major League Baseball right now might be John Fisher. Just terrible what he did to Oakland. I feel so much for their fans, and this is their final season in Oakland. They're going to maybe play 3 seasons in Sacramento and then go to Las Vegas. It's a complete nightmare what is happening over there, and there's been a lot of crazy memories, over the years in Oakland for the Orioles. You had, just thinking back to some wild games over the years, a memory for me, remember when the Manny Machado, Josh Donaldson scuffle happened, and then Machado hit a big go-ahead home run late in a game in Oakland a couple of years ago. These two teams have a lot of history. Jim Palmer talked about it a lot. They played in a whole lot of ALCSs in the 70s when both teams were great. Just kind of a sad way to see it close out, but the Orioles close it out on a positive note, winning 2 out of 3. Now, as I'm recording here, it is Sunday evening. Sunday Night Baseball is just now getting underway between the Yankees and the Red Sox. The Orioles are now on the season with the win on Sunday. They are sitting at 57-33 through 90 games. Again, currently they're 2.5 games up on the Yankees. If the Yankees beat the Red Sox, it'll be a 2-game lead. If the Red Sox can win, it'll be a 3-game lead going into the off day here on Monday. But let's start with the Sunday victory, the most recent one. Orioles winning at 6-3 on Sunday to clinch the series. And I'm going to continue with this little different podcast format for the Monday episodes, for the weekend recaps. Not going to be the 5 things you need to know for every game. Instead, what went right, what went wrong, and a little shout out to some player, some person, some position group for each game. And we start with Sunday. What went right? Well, what went right was Grayson Rodriguez through the first 5 innings of the game on Sunday. Now, Grayson's final line, he did end up pitching into the 7th inning in this game, but did not record an out in that 7th. Grayson goes 6+, allowing 3 runs on 6 hits with 8 strikeouts and 1 walk on 95 pitches. Just 5 hard hit balls by Oakland hitters against him in this one. But he was cruising through 5 innings, 5 scoreless and walkless innings to begin this one for Grayson Rodriguez. He was efficient, no walks. He was throwing strikes. The command looked great. And the changeup for the second straight start on this road trip was unreal. That was maybe the best we'd ever seen the changeup in that start Tuesday night in Seattle when he dominated. This was up there, what we saw on Sunday. 9 swings against his changeup by Oakland hitters, and on 7 of those 9 swings, they swung and missed. He's getting lefties, which is what he's usually done with his changeup. It's an out pitch against a lefty, but he's also getting a lot of righties to swing and miss at that changeup. And that is what takes that pitch from, okay, this is a good changeup in Major League Baseball, to maybe his elite out pitch and one of the better offerings in the league. If you can get righties with that pitch as well, because he's already got other weapons. We already know that fastball is a great pitch up at 97. That was the final pitch through the sixth inning to get a strikeout, but he mixed his stuff. He was throwing a lot slower slider. His slider was 3 miles per hour slower than average and looked like it had a little more bend to it and actually worked out. He's been kind of tinkering with sometimes 2 different sliders at times this year. Andy Koska of the Baltimore Banner wrote a good article about that earlier this year, but it's just a really good Grayson start through 5 innings. And then you ask, well, what went wrong? Grayson in the 6th and beyond is kind of what went wrong in this game. Now, luckily, the Orioles held on for a victory, but Rodriguez, of course, he was only at like 70 pitches. He comes back out for the 6th. The Orioles lead 5-0, and immediately it's the 3rd time through the order. J.J. Bleday, the A's center fielder, the leadoff man, is up for the 3rd time, and he walks him on 4 pitches to start the inning, and you're like, oh boy. Gets a fly out. Then he hits Brent Rooker. I believe it was only the 3rd batter Grayson has hit all season. Gets behind 3-1 to Soderstrom, allows an RBI double, then a sac fly, does get a big strikeout to end the inning. The A's put up 2 runs. It's a 5-2 game. His pitch count was up at 91, and you just felt like, okay, he was great for 5. He struggled in the 6th. He got out of it. He's at 91 pitches, and the bullpen was fairly rested. Like the Orioles, the only 2 relievers they didn't have available were Cole Irvin and Dylan Tate in this game. They had 6 relief pitchers available behind Grayson. And you don't need to save anyone because they had the off day coming up on Monday. So you're thinking, this is great. You're in a good spot with your pen. You still get 6 strong innings, a quality start. Let's pull him out of the game. And Jacob Webb was already warming in the 6th when Grayson got into the jam. So you knew Webb was going to be ready in the 7th. And then Rodriguez came back out there in the 7th inning. I was pretty perplexed. I got to say, and I said this to myself when he was on the mound to begin the 7th, I was like, this might be the decision that Brandon Hyde has made that I've disagreed with most so far in the 2024 season. I just think when you combine the pitch count was up, he'd had a really rough inning, and you have a rested bullpen, I just thought it was a no-brainer to go to Webb and go to the pen to start the 7th. He did not. Now, it's not like Grayson got crushed in that 7th inning, but he gave up 2 ground ball singles that snuck through the right side. And all of a sudden, the A's had 1st and 3rd, nobody out, and I'm bringing the tying run to the plate. And Hyde does come out and get Jacob Webb. And Webb did a great job, got a strikeout, should have gotten a ground ball double play to end the inning, but Gunnar Henderson, a terrible throw, an error, allows the 3rd run to score before Webb does get the 3rd out of the 7th, keeping it at a 5-3 lead. And luckily, the Oriole bullpen did a great job. Cano was good in a scoreless 8th, Kimbrel good in a scoreless 9th to get the save to close out the victory. But I kind of couldn't believe it. And I think people who listen to this podcast and watch this show know that I've been a large believer and large supporter of Brandon Hyde. And honestly, at this point, they just won 101 games. They're back in 1st place at the AL East here in July in this season. Like, if you're still saying, oh, Brandon Hyde's a bad manager, got to fire Brandon Hyde. What is he doing? He doesn't know what he's doing. You don't know anything. You're not watching the games. You're uninformed. Yeah, you're just trying to get a rise out of people. But I will say, I was perplexed by sending Grayson back out there for the 7th. Now, luckily, the Orioles bullpen was good enough to overcome it and still win this ball game. But yeah, just didn't look like that same pitcher, especially in the 6th. And that's why I was a little surprised he came back out for the 7th. And then the shout out for this game, the shout out goes to Heston Kjerstad. How about that? Kjerstad continues to swing the bat well. Now, he hadn't started in this series until Sunday. Did come off the bench and go 2 for 2 in the game on Saturday, but gets his first start of the series on Sunday playing left field, and takes the biggest swing of this game after Anthony Santander had hit a solo home run with 2 outs in the 1st off of Mitch Spence to put the Orioles up 1-0. Shout out to Santander. He was talking before the game, apparently, how he didn't like the Coliseum because he had never homered there. Well, finally, in his final game there, he hits a long ball to put the O's up 1-0. And then they kind of continue to rally. They get a couple on, and Kjerstad gets a hanging breaking ball and just crushes one out to dead center field. A 3-run homer in the 1st inning to put the O's up 4-0, 107.4 off the bat, 406 feet for Kjerstad. It's his 3rd home run since returning, and he did only go 1 for 4 in the game. Now, he hit a fly ball that brought in a run later in this outing, but it ended up, I think, rightfully being called an error. It was a fly ball that was to the warning track in right center field. It was just flat out dropped that added a run for the O's in the 3rd. And he did go 1 for 4 with that home run. But You look at Kjerstad, and on the year now, he's hitting 295 with a 937 OPS. If you take the stats just since he returned back to the big leagues a couple of weeks ago, 324 average, 1175 OPS since the Orioles brought him back up. Now, there is still the issue of, do you trust him defensively enough to put him in the outfield every day? And he has been better in this second stint back in the outfield. That's been good. He did make kind of a boneheaded throw home that allowed a runner to advance an extra 90 feet in this game, but otherwise moved around well and made the plays he needed to in left field on Sunday. But he's just going to continue to force his way into the lineup. And even though, like, I'll talk about it later, Austin Hayes had a really good weekend starting the first two games, so he's trying to get back in the lineup. We know Kowser's still there. There's a lot of moving pieces in left field right now for the Orioles, but Kjerstad is trying to just put his foot down and say, look, get me in this lineup every single day. And I don't think he's at that point yet because the defense holds him back a little bit, but he's fairly close because of how he is producing for this Oriole offense. And the O's get the 6-3 win on Sunday to clinch the series. But to win a series of 3 games, of course, you got to get at least 2 wins. And the other one came in the opener on Friday night. And coming up next, tell you how the Orioles held on for the series opening win. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks, which for me is really the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Now you're wondering, Connor, how does Prize Picks work? Well, all you do is go on the Prize Picks app and pick more or less on anywhere from 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you just watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can look at, really the big thing right now is Major League Baseball and the WNBA. So whether it's stat lines for more or less, this certain amount of points from stars like Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese, or it's guys like Gunnar Henderson or Adley Rutschman, more or less than 1.5 hits, 2.5 total bases, things like that. If you just make the right pick enough times, you win money. It's that simple. You can make an entry in like 60 seconds. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100 at Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Tax Network USA. Here at Locked On Orioles, we pride ourselves in getting you the latest news for the O's, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It is year-round. But you know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. So don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or you just finally hit that parlay this season and you need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And be sure to mention Locked On Orioles at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount off their services at Tax Network USA. So the Orioles got the finale with a 6-3 win on Sunday, which clinched the series for them because they also won the opener on Friday by a score of 3-2. And let's start with Friday. What went right in the series opener for the O's? And well, it was Albert Suarez again. Suarez had that stretch of 2 bad starts right around when Dean Kramer was knocking on the door to return to the Oriole rotation. And I had said it, look, Cole Irvin was struggling. Albert Suarez was struggling. I said I was leaning Irvin stays in the rotation. Suarez goes to the bullpen. However, the O's made the opposite choice. They kept Suarez in the rotation. They pushed Irvin into the pen. And it turned out to be the right decision because he has turned in back-to-back, honestly, fantastic starts for the O's since he got the vote of confidence to stay in that spot. Last start was 6 scoreless. This time he gave up a couple of runs, but he pitched into the 7th inning for the first time this season. Now, did he face only 1 batter in the 7th? Yes. And did he allow a leadoff home run to Shea Langoliers in the 7th and then come out of the game? Yes, as well. But overall, 6+ innings of 2-run ball for Albert Suarez on 4 hits, 6 Ks, a walk, and 2 homers on just 86 pitches, just 4 hard hit balls by the A's against him. It feels like at this point, there's only so much more I can say about Albert Suarez. He's got a 2.48 ERA on the season, as mostly a starter, has helped in relief too. I think the Orioles hope eventually he is a reliever again because they upgrade the starting rotation, but he has been a savior for this Orioles team with the amount of pitching injuries they have had to go through. Where would they be without Albert Suarez? And he was just great again in this game. 6 strikeouts tied a season high for Suarez. He used that really good fastball. That's his bread and butter. He used that pitch to get ahead, which he always does. But then he made a little bit of a change in this start. Now, 44 of his 86 pitches, over 50%, were four-seam fastballs. That's very usual. Then he kind of mixes in the other off speeds. But usually that cutter, it's kind of like a hard slider at 86, is usually his go-to number 2 pitch. That was not the case. He threw the curveball and the changeup a lot more. The cutter was actually his number 4 pitch on Friday night. It really worked out. His curveball, Jim Palmer talked about it, was probably the best his curveball had looked all season. And the changeup against, a good chunk of left-handed hitters he saw in the A's lineup, the changeup was pretty nasty too. He kind of just didn't have the cutter, so he went away from it. And it was great to see that, hey, the pitches that Suarez thinks are his number 3 and number 4 offerings, he was really able to step up and use those and still be as good as he was. And I get it. It's the Oakland Athletics offense, but we saw what they did on Saturday. They can put up some runs. You got to get them out. And Suarez did it again. And who knows how long he stays in this rotation as the O's hopefully make some upgrades this month. But it's just unbelievable. I mean, Ryan O'Hearn was a great find. This has got to be, I think, the best find that the the scouting department, international scouting, Mike Elias, his people, everybody have done so far for this Orioles team. Just what a performance again from Albert Suarez. Now, what went wrong on the flip side? It was the Orioles converting on their scoring chances. You'd like to get more than 3 runs in any game against the Oakland Athletics, but the O's only got those 3, and they came in the first 2 innings. The Orioles got a run in the first, got themselves on the board to get a 1-0 lead, and then they did get 2 more in the second to go up 3-1 after Suarez did allow a solo homer in the first, but they could have had more in the second. They loaded the bases, and they just couldn't bring any more home, but still, you'll take a 2-run inning at any point. And then the Orioles did not score again after that. They had 8 hits on the day. They drew 4 walks as well, but the O's ended up going 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position in Friday's game. And one of those hits was in the 9th inning when Jorge Mateo, with a runner on second and no outs, had an infield single. So that second hit didn't even score a run. It made it first and third no outs. And the O's just failed to score in that spot in the top of the 9th. The 9th inning was really that other big spot where, okay, you're leading it 3-2. You could really use at least one insurance run. You get first and third with no outs with the top of the order coming up, and they just didn't come through. They had Gunnar and Adley up there and just could not do it. And even at the beginning of the game, Hogan Harris, the lefty who got the start for the A's, he threw about 40 pitches in that second inning. And of course, it's great to get 2 runs, but it's like you get a guy who doesn't have the greatest track record in the world to throw 40 pitches in 1 inning. You are probably asking for a little more than 2 runs, and Harris was able to settle down and somehow sneak his way through 5 innings in this game. Now, the Orioles, it's not some sort of gigantic issue on the season. They're still hitting, I believe this was coming into play Sunday, .259 on the season with runners in scoring position. That's 14th in baseball. They're right around middle of the pack. Last year, they were like a top 2 team all year with runners in scoring position. It's okay because they're hitting more homers, hitting for more power. They're making up for it. And remember, they are still scoring the most runs per game in Major League Baseball, and that is with a middle-of-the-road runners in scoring position number. Now, those numbers have gone a little bit down more lately, especially on this West Coast trip. But I know a lot of people were trying to say, oh, it's an indictment on this team. They can't hit with no. The runners in scoring position is kind of a luck-based number as well. Like, there's no difference between a leadoff single and a single with a runner at second, besides it scores a run. But in general, you're just hitting a single. It's more about sometimes sequencing than anything else. And there's some luck with sequencing involved there. The O's will be fine. They drive the ball out of the ballpark. They still get a solid amount of hits with runners in scoring position. Just a little bit of a tough stretch in that spot. Luckily, the O's were able to hold on despite not adding to the lead, because the shout out goes to Austin Hayes, who helped the O's get some runs, and to the bullpen as well. Austin Hayes celebrating his 29th birthday on Friday night. We know it had been a struggle this year, was really bad, got injured, but has been much better since returning from that injury. And how about Hayes? 3 for 4 with a single, a couple of doubles, and an RBI to celebrate his birthday on Friday. Was really driving the baseball, looked really, really good at the plate. It earned him the start again on Saturday. He was obviously going to be in the lineup Friday against the lefty, but the A's had a righty out there on Saturday, and Hayes was still in the starting lineup because of how well he performed on Friday. Just good to see him contributing. I still don't think he will ever get back to being the Orioles' everyday left fielder, but as he produces more and more as the season goes on, he'll get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger role. And at the very least, he's a really good platoon bat to have on your bench, and he can start a little bit more than your general platoon bat can. He can also hit righties, not just lefties. He's turning back into a useful piece of this Orioles roster, which you couldn't say early in the season for Austin Hayes. And then that bullpen just said, all right, offense, you're not going to give us anything more. We're just going to be nasty. I mean, Jacob Webb came in. He was nasty per usual with a 1-2-3 7th with 2 strikeouts. Cano came in, got in a little bit of trouble. Runner got to third base with 1 out, got a huge strikeout and a ground out to get out of the inning. And then Craig Kimbrel, ho-hum, comes in there. Boom, boom, boom. Absolute filth with a couple of strikeouts to end that game. And Craig Kimbrel, nasty in the ninth. 23 innings and about a 1.5 ERA with 9 hits allowed, 35 strikeouts, and 8 walks since his bad weekend the last time against the A's. That was really that one bad stretch Kimbrel went through when Oakland came to Baltimore and Kimbrel blew saves on Friday and Sunday, got injured. The O's lost 2 of 3. Since then, Kimbrel has been, no doubt, a top 5 closer in Major League Baseball. Unfortunately, he, at least for now, is not going to the All-Star game for that. We'll get to that in a little bit, but like, if you haven't eased off of Craig Kimbrel, it's time to do it. He's just been absolutely nasty lately, and he closed out another, remember, he wasn't getting them for a while, but closed out another 1-run save on Friday night as the O's took the opener, and then, of course, took it on Sunday to win the series. But you're thinking, Connor, okay, they didn't sweep, so what happened on Saturday? Was it a close loss? No, it was maybe the Orioles' worst game of the season, but I think contractually I have to talk about it. So we're going to quickly recap it and then talk about the Orioles' other All-Stars besides Adley and Gunnar coming up right after this to finish off the pod. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Listen, I love sports. I never want them to stop. But the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA Finals, those things are over. We are at the point where it's a little bit lighter, right? In the just sports season in general. You got Major League Baseball, you got the WNBA. There's some other things to watch. Wimbledon going on, the Olympics coming up soon, the Euros, and unfortunately the Copa America. And hopefully, I don't understand how Greg Berhalter still has a job at this moment, but maybe that will not be the case later this week. But either way, yeah, it's a little lighter on the calendar, but there's still sports on every day in the summer. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, and that is all summer long. That's right. All summer. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by the DK Law Group. The DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. And the DK Law Group knows that speed is key. By leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and serve you faster. So contact the DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. And Locked On Orioles listeners can call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. So the Orioles did win the series this weekend in Oakland, but they did not sweep it. And that is because something happened on Saturday that was not a whole lot of fun to watch, but I still want to tell you about it. The final score from Saturday was A's 19 and Orioles 8. Most runs the O's have given up this year. I still kind of can't believe that happened, but it did. Now let's start with what went wrong in that one. Well, mostly everything, but especially Cade Povich. By far, not even particularly close, Cade Povich put together the worst start from an Orioles starter this year. His final line was 1 inning. Now, he did pitch into the second, but he did not record it out in the second. 1+ inning, 8 runs on 5 hits, 1 strikeout, 3 walks, 2 homers, 43 pitches, 4 hard hit balls, and just ballooned his ERA here in his rookie season. Now, it's only his 6th career start. He had 1 ass start, 4 pretty solid starts in a row, and 1 really bad start. His first blow up in the big leagues came on Saturday. It was due to happen. I saw a lot of other talk that was, oh, this is why the O's need another starting pitcher. They do need another starting pitcher. It's not because Cade Povich had 1 really bad start. I saw a lot of, oh, I told you he wasn't ready. He needs to go down to AAA. Did you not watch the other starts he was throwing where he was keeping the O's in ball games and battling and throwing 6 scoreless against the Braves and keeping the O's in it at Yankee Stadium and, flummoxing hitters, barely allowing any hard contact? Yeah, he still deserves to be part of this rotation. There's a reason that when Dean Kramer came back, the Orioles didn't make what could have been an easy move and just option Povich back to AAA and put Kramer in his spot. They moved Cole Irvin to the bullpen just so they could keep Povich in the rotation. That tells you they believe in Cade Povich right now. And that doesn't mean he's going to stay in the rotation all year. He could be one of the casualties if the Orioles do add to this rotation by the deadline. That is certainly a possibility. But right now, even with this terrible start, he's got this spot. And you could tell from the beginning. I mean, I felt like it was a mechanical issue for Povich on Saturday. He walked the leadoff batter, Daz Cameron, on 4 pitches. And on the 3-0 pitch, he threw a fastball to the backstop on 3-0. You immediately knew one batter in. Oh no, this is not good. Walked the second batter on 5 pitches, and the only strike call he got was an iffy strike that could have been a ball off the inside corner. You're like, oh no. So then he's feeling, I got to throw strikes. He's facing Brent Rooker, best hitter in the Oakland lineup. He grooves him a pitch. Rooker crushes a 3-run homer, and it's 3-0 before he's recorded an out. He got through the first, and he thought, okay, could turn it around. And then same thing happened in the second. 2 runners on, boom, 3-run homer. It's 6-0, and the day is basically kaput for Cade Povich. Now, this is something that happened to him in the minors sometimes. You could kind of tell during his minor league starts, even in the upper minors in AA and AAA, you could tell from the first inning sometimes whether or not Cade Povich would have it or not. His mechanics would look off. He would walk guys in the first inning and you'd be like, it's just going to be a bad day. And even in the minors, he would struggle sometimes to correct it mid-game. He was really good at correcting it between starts. He would usually come back out after a bad start and have a really good one. So hopefully that is the case for Povich. Coming up later this week, he may be starting in that series against the Yankees next weekend. So hopefully it is the case. But it was something we saw in the minor leagues. And here's the thing. It's a mechanical issue. They're not so much going to work on the mechanics. I think he'll find it again. They're going to more so work on, okay, what do you do? What's your attack plan when you feel in the first inning that you don't have it? How can you get yourself out of that and still keep your team in the game? That's what he needs to work on. But when you only throw 91 and you can't find the delivery, you're going to throw some meatballs. And that is just what happened to Cade Povich. He'll be fine. There's no reason to send him down, especially with the lack of starting pitching depth right now. He will be good, but just a rough day on Saturday. Now, what went right? The O's offense staying in it. I mean, yeah, they still left a good chunk of runners on base, especially early in the game. They loaded the bases with no outs in the third and didn't score. But when you're down 10-0 after 2 innings, most teams would roll over. Most teams would not still put up 8 runs in that game. And yet that's what the Orioles did. And yeah, they still got crushed, but Heston Kjerstad had a couple of hits off the bench, Westberg a couple of hits, Mountcastle 2 hits, Hayes 2 more hits with 4 hard hit balls. Ramon Arias had 2 hits. I mean, everybody got in on the hit parade basically in this game. Gunnar Henderson had a couple of knocks. And, they scored 3 in the 7th, 2 in the 8th, 2 in the 9th, and the game was still completely over at those points. But most teams would just say, all right, we'll get them tomorrow. They kept fighting, and that's what this Orioles team does. It still didn't get them back in it. But remember, when they were down 14-3 in Houston and it became a 14-11 game, they can get back into games like this because it's such a high-powered offense. And with the home run ball, they can beat you super quickly. They had traffic almost every inning. They kept the pressure on. You love to see that, a team not kind of roll over. And the shout out for Saturday does go to the bullpen. Now, it wasn't great for Dylan Tate, but he did eat some outs. And listen, it wasn't great for Cole Irvin either. He was obviously the guy that was going to come into this game, had just been moved to the pen. He's a long reliever. You get 1 inning from your starter. He gave up 5 runs on 5 hits, 4 Ks, 3 walks, and a home run in relief. But you know what? He at least threw him 4 innings, and he saved the bullpen. And although it didn't look good, and it hasn't looked good lately, pretty much every time Irvin has pitched, he saved the pen. And the last shout out goes to the Orioles' final reliever, and that was James McCann, who came in there and did give up a 2-run homer to Kyle McCann. Something has to be investigated here. How are there so many major league catchers named McCann? I don't think there might be some relation here between some of them. There might not be. I'm not really sure what the true relation is. If there is some, let me know in the comments. How are we getting Brian McCann, James McCann, and Kyle McCann all to be big league catchers? How are they facing off against each other? And how is Kyle McCann hitting? Well, I know how Kyle McCann's hitting a 2-run homer because James McCann was throwing 45-mile-per-hour loop balls. But you know what? If you finish an inning as a position player and you only allow 2 runs, that's a win. So shout out James McCann, who I believe pitched in 1 game last year for the O's as well. He is their position player pitcher. He was throwing strikes. Like, all you can ask for is throwing strikes, and at 45 miles an hour. Listen, when you're down 19-8, if you can at least have a little bit of fun and take a little joy out of watching McCann pitch, you got to loosen up a little bit in the middle of a major league season. That was kind of fun at the end of what was a dreadful, dreadful game on Saturday, but it didn't matter. The O's sandwiched it. Boom, 2 wins, and they win the series in Oakland, and they continue to lead the AL East heading into this off day here on Monday. Now, the Orioles also learned about their other All-Stars. We know Adley and Gunnar are starters. Surprisingly, the only other All-Star named on Sunday was Corbin Burnes, who might even start the game next Tuesday. Ryan Mountcastle, Ryan O'Hearn, Jordan Westberg, Anthony Santander, Grayson Rodriguez, Craig Kimbrel, all with chances to get it. Some of them better than others. Some of them deservedly should be on that list. I don't get too worked up about it. Listen, a lot of this is players and coaches picking these guys. And you got to remember, the players and coaches, they don't watch everybody every night. They're just seeing teams when they come in to play them. They're just picking the biggest names. It's still a popularity contest. I mean, the fan voting is a complete joke. At least the players is a little bit better, but it's still a popularity contest. Guys get hurt. Guys don't go to the game. Other guys will be added to the roster. It doesn't work me up too much, but it is kind of disappointing that Corbin Burnes is the only other Orioles All-Star, but we'll keep you covered if other Orioles do get named to the team. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for being patient last week. Did a pretty large equipment upgrade for the podcast, mostly on the tech side over this weekend. So hopefully things are sounding and looking much clearer, much crisper, especially here on the YouTube channel, where you can, of course, like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Leave a 5-star rating and a review wherever you listen as well, if you don't mind. It really, really helps out the show a lot. The plan for tomorrow, because the O's, what is this, back-to-back weeks with an off day. They got another off day here on Monday before the Cubs come to town on Tuesday. I will be in the ballpark Tuesday night, so if you see me in the park, come and say hi, talk a little bit of O's as they take on the Cubs. But the plan is we're going to have our favorite MLB draft expert on the show tomorrow. That is Joe Doyle. He has joined us, I think, the last 4 years on the show right before the draft. The MLB draft is 6 days away. It is next Sunday. The Orioles pick 22nd and 32nd on day 1. We'll have Joe come in to talk about who the O's could pick and how their kind of strategy changes as they get better and better and therefore move further and further down the first round of the draft. But that's all coming up on tomorrow's episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.